This morning, I have come to walk once again in Chaguaramas. And this time, I'm taking my walk alongside what is commonly referred to as Williams Bay. Back in the 1800s, this bay was the southern end of an estate that was called Bellevue. Bellevue, B-E-L-L-E-V-U-E. And by 1830, it was owned by a man called Henry Fuller. I believe he would have been an Englishman. But the name of the estate suggests to me that Henry Fuller was not the original owner of the estate. And I believe that Bellevue Estate would have probably been owned by a Frenchman or someone of French descent. Most likely, that original owner would have been one of those who came to Trinidad from either Grenada or Martinique to take advantage of the Cédula de Population under Governor Chacon, and would have been granted land here in the Chaguaramas Valley. And hence the name Bellevue. In the beginning, there would have been quite a lot of these French settlers in Chaguaramas. And in fact, Williams Bay was not the original name of this bay. It had a series of names. It was called at one time Carambola Bay. It was also known as Anse Trinquart. Anse Trinquart. And I'm led to believe that meant Fishing Boat Bay. It was also known as Anse Trinquanta, which my research indicates means Big Shot Bay. Which suggests that this beach would have been very popular with those people in Trinidad at the time who had money. Estate owners, merchants, and the like that. Well, in the 1940s, all of them lost access to this beach, with the Americans being granted Chaguaramas as a base. In a sense, we should be thankful that the Americans were granted Chaguaramas as a base, because this was the area that the wealthy and not so wealthy of Port of Spain and northwestern Trinidad came to relax and bathe in the sea. And the population made a lot of noise about granting of the Americans this area. In fact, the governor at the time, Governor Young, vehemently objected. He had wanted the Americans to be given land in Caroni, saying let them fill the Caroni swamp and make that into a base. By granting them this, denied the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago one of their favorite bathing spots. And so he objected vehemently. In fact, it's believed that because of his objection, Governor Young was transferred out of Trinidad by the British. Nevertheless, all those objections led to the Americans ultimately building a road over the northern range leading to Maracas Bay. So from that point of view, we have to be happy that the Americans got Chaguaramas, because that led to the creation of that North Coast Road, making it easy for all of us to now go to Chaguaramas. Not to Chaguaramas, making it easy for all of us to now go to Maracas Beach whenever we want. So in that regard, we have to be thankful. There's been quite a lot of development along this bay to provide amenities for citizens. This particular place with all these huts, I'm told that you can come and rent them and have your line. I'll take a little detour in there to see. It looks like the barbecue pits. Let me take a little quick detour. All part of the walk. Benches. Sink and countertop. Okay. Doesn't look like you can barbecue. Maybe if you brought your barbecue grill and put it on the side. Not sure. Alright. Going back on the walkway. Well, as I said in a previous video, I don't particularly like walking where the cars going by all the time. But this morning, I want to take a swim after my walk. Every time I come here or come along here and walk and then head back home, I'm always seeing the sea, looking at it. Tide is high and the water looks so nice. So I decided that today I was going to take a walk, take a swim after my walk. Cool down a little bit and then go and spend a few minutes in that water. It's living on an island and yet don't go to the beach. Maybe once a month if I'm lucky these days. And sometimes it seems like even longer than that. So I said this week for sure, when I come to walk, I have to take a swim. I'm going to cut off here and I'll rejoin you all in a while because I'm coming to the end of this walkway and I have to navigate a piece where there's no sidewalk and oncoming traffic. So I'll get back to you in a little while. Okay. I've gotten away from the part where I'm walking on the edge of the road. Over there you see the kayak center. And then here we have Castor Cove, which was supposed to be a restaurant serving seafood, mainly seafood. It didn't do so well. Now it appears to only open for special events, weddings and graduations and other such functions. But back along the other side of Williams Bay. Oh yeah. Early on, I told you the other names for this bay. Back in the era when French patois would have dominated. But now it's called Williams Bay. And why is that? Well, around 1988, the bay was renamed Williams Bay in honor of the first Prime Minister of Trinidad, Dr. Eric Eustace Williams. And David was renamed because of the fight that he had waged to get the Americans out of Chaguaramas. A lot of his argument was that the British gave it to them, but there weren't any proper legal documents supporting their right to the land. And that although they had a 99-year lease, which would have taken them to somewhere around 2044, he was like, no, this has to be returned to Trinidad and Tobago. And so, around 1988, the bay was renamed Williams Bay. As I come along this walkway, you have a very nice view of what are known as the 5 islands in the distance. And then over there is one of the Coast Guard bases, the military museum, and so forth. And what we're seeing up ahead is known as Tembladora. I was curious about that name, so I went and tried to find out what does Tembladora mean. Apparently, it's a Spanish word meaning trembling woman. Why they would name here trembling woman, I do not know, but that's the name. But what Tembladora is actually famous for is that it was, notice the word I said, it was a bauxite transshipment facility. Before I talk about the creation of that transport facility, let me point out one other thing. During World War II, the Allies had worked out that for goods coming by sea, it was better for them to form convoys, that they could better protect the convoy than individual ships sailing alone. And Trinidad was one of the locations where convoys formed up. So we had oil, petroleum, crude oil and refined oil being taken from both the Point Fortin and Point Apia refineries up to the US. But there were other ships that came here. There were Brazilian ships that came to Trinidad. Those ships were transporting iron ore from Brazil. And they were escorted by the Brazilian Navy up to Trinidad, where they would then form up with other ships to form the convoy. But one of the other products that was brought was bauxite. Bauxite that's used for the production of aluminum. And bauxite, well, aluminum actually, was very important to the Allied war effort because it was used in the construction of the fighter planes and bomber planes. And that bauxite is coming from Suriname. There were two companies operating, Alcan and Alcoa. Although I think Alcan was mainly mining in Guyana and Alcoa was mining in Suriname. And so Alcoa was bringing the bauxite here to Trinidad, and then those ships would also form part of the convoy and go on up to the US and Canada. Well, let me stop a minute and show you the water. Oh, this morning, look how clear it is. See the rocks. Yeah, here's a rocky bay. Look how clear. You can look down and see the rocks underneath. So yeah, I was saying that Alcoa was mining the bauxite in Suriname, bringing it to Trinidad to then join the convoy up to the US and Canada. Eventually, Alcoa decided they needed to establish a facility here in Trinidad because Suriname didn't have deep water ports. And so the bauxite was being transported in shallow draft vessels that were smaller. So Alcoa decided they needed to establish a facility in Trinidad where they would bring the bauxite, store it in silos, and then load it into much larger vessels for shipment to the US and Canada. And they chose this area, Tembladora. It's said that the reason that they chose here is because of the US base, that they wanted the protection of the US forces that would be nearby. And right here is deep water, as you can see from the vessels that are tied up alongside. And from my understanding, around 1948 is when they began the construction of this facility. There were some large silos to the front here where they stored the bauxite. However, around I think it's 2013, but from about 2007 they began to reduce what was coming here, and around 2013 they completely stopped. The reason given by Alcoa was that basically the bauxite reserves in Suriname were being exhausted and that it was uneconomic for them to tranship now to Trinidad. And so around, I think it's 2013, they stopped transshipping to Trinidad. They have since sold the facility, and there's now a company that's operating here called Tembladora Energy Logistics. This is involved in shipping, but mainly for the oil and gas industry. So that's the story on Tembladora. It is a very nice morning. I am definitely taking my walk back, cool off a little bit, and then go in the water. On the way back, I'm going to see if I can avoid that section where I have to walk along the side of the road, much like what I'm doing now. I believe there's a way to get to the boardwalk and to bypass, maybe not all of that part along the road, but some of it. If I can, I'll come back on and show you. Yes, it seems that I can get back onto the boardwalk from this area. Well, I took a shortcut through Castor Cove because their gate was open. Not sure if you could cut through from by the kayak center. No, their gates are closed. So if they aren't, I know for sure you can cut through from by Scallywag. So for my walk going back, I'm going to use the boardwalk. Coming up, I use the bike pathway that the Chaguaramas Development Authority had created. But for the walk back, I'm using the boardwalk. In there is Scallywag Bay with rock climbing and miniature golf, and not sure what else. But they have a food court as well in there, I know. But as I say, I'm using the nice boardwalk that was created. Would you believe that back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, this entire bay was fringed with coconut trees. Now there just one or two. But recently I saw a photograph from back in those days, and the entire bay was fringed with coconut. It was beautiful. Even now, it's still a beautiful bay with the backdrop of the hills and the greenery and then the clear water. Look at it again, clear. I'm going to bathe across there in that far section. There is not as rocky. It's, well, let's say a mixture of sand. The last time I went there were a little bit rocks, but not much. It's so nice and cool underneath these trees. I hope you've been enjoying these walks that I've been taking. And, oops, got my finger in the picture. Yeah. I hope you've been enjoying these walks that I've been taking. My selfie stick conked out on me this morning, so I have to use my hand and pull it out. Anyhow, if you like these videos, please click the like button and share the video. And if you want to see other such videos, then please select one of the two videos that will be showing on your screen shortly.